Hello, everybody. This is Yu Tsai. Welcome to Let's Talk. And today is Friday, and I'm ending my week with my old friend that we haven't seen each other for about 10 years, I think. We're going to count back in history and see when was the first time we met. But I have none other than Ross Butler with us, and I'm so excited you can join me today.
What's up, guys? Yeah, I'm glad to be here and chat with my old buddy. We literally has been about 10 years,
I
a
believe it's
little
10
bit
years.
less.
Maybe a little less, but it was crazy. I've seen how amazing, successful your career has become since the first time we shot together, and
I
I
know.
want to revisit some of that stuff. But before we do that, let me just give a little shout out to everybody who's been supporting this show. So as you know, everyone, for every guest that come on the show, we're donating 500 masks to first responders. Thus far, we have raised over 80,000 masks. So if you guys wish to support and donate, you can go to our website, and there it is,
Wow.
liveletstalk.com. So every guest that comes on thus far, we donate 500, and the guests either match it or do beyond. So some of the guests have donated up to 30,000 masks. So our goal is 100,000. I'm almost there. So
Nice.
no part, guys. All right, so let's get talking. Let's
Yeah,
go.
man.
So what's been going on the last 10 years with you?
Last 10 years, man. I mean, for people that don't know, Yusai and I, we shot a Coca-Cola campaign yeah, I'd say 8 years ago. I wanted, because I moved out 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago.
Well, let's,
And
let's
just,
start from there. So where were you before? You were in
I'm
Singapore?
from DC. No. I was born in Singapore, but I moved to DC or Northern Virginia when I was 4, and then I lived there until I was 20. So like I was raised there. Um, yeah, and then I went to Ohio State for a year. I dropped out, moved back to DC, then decided I wanted to move to LA. Not even to become an actor. I just wanted to move to LA. And then yeah, that was 2010, and then we
How
shot.
did how did you even thought to move to LA if it wasn't for the acting bug or modeling bug?
Um, I don't know. It's because I'd been to California before for like SAT prep over the summer. So like I'd been to Santa Barbara, I'd been to San Diego, I'd been to LA a couple times, and I just loved it, and I loved the vibe. And even though I was raised academic, I always felt like I wanted to be an entertainer, and I felt like this was kind of the place to be, even though I didn't know I want to act.
But
So
what were
yeah,
you
I mean,
studying in college? What was your major?
biomolecular and chemical engineering.
That I knew how to do. Oh, pre-med right here. This is
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I remember I was talking about that. Yeah, it's like the cultural expectation of like being academic and yeah, it just makes
absolutely.
sense.
Well, here's something I want to set everybody up so they know that. So I was shooting a Coca-Cola campaign I would say actually about 8 years ago. And
Yeah.
during that time, I was ambassador of Coca-Cola, and we weren't only just shooting the campaign, we were looking for talents that can actually represent a brand outside of just being a model. And this is way before Instagram, way before all the people looking for
Yeah.
influencers. We were way ahead of our time. So the casting was very much like American Idol. It was insane. There's thousands and thousands of people show up for over 2 weeks' time. And we narrowed down to 500 to 300 to 200. And then we had cast of 14 that we needed to fill. And I remember you so well because people didn't realize who I was, a photographer. They didn't know what I looked like. So I would walk through the crowd. I would just walk through the crowd, look at the people who come in for casting, and I would just
Yeah, I
point out,
remember
and
that.
I would take a little phone pic, I would take a little picture of Polaroid and send it to my assistant and say, hey, pull this person out of the crowd, pull that person out of the crowd. So in this particular genre we were casting for, it was for the Asia market. So
Mhm.
interesting enough that we were looking for Asians, but we were looking for people who would look like they would live in Asia. It sounds funny to say that, but we were looking for white people, dark-skinned people, everybody who were very Benetton-ish, but we needed somebody who kind of has a crossover, a little bit whitey, a little bit Asian-y, a little bit combination of both. And
Yeah.
international, we like to say international.
International, yeah, the
International
international
look.
market, yeah.
And here this guy who was 6'3" stood up
Mhm.
out of the crowd from far away. I could see him, and you had this dude, like just this energy of like not really like care. You weren't like I need to get a car. You didn't give a crap. You were just like, dude, I'm here to hang out. And I remember going up to him, I go, where you from? He's like, oh yeah, I just got to LA. And I'm like, okay, he doesn't even want this job. He doesn't even care. But that was the reason I fell in love with you. I love the
That's
idea that
funny,
you
man.
weren't there in line waiting just so that you can get this part you wanted so bad. Because listen, that's good, that's great. But in this particular casting, we're looking for people which is truly authentic. And amazing enough, I didn't even know you were going to be a star, but I take a little bit of credit of finding that star in you in the thousands of people who were casting. So
Yeah,
it was awesome. We shot for like a week. It was like a week shoot.
Yeah, it was really long. I remember because the first few days it was raining every day too. So I think like oh my God. I cannot believe you have that.
I have them all.
Oh my
Of course I
God.
have them all.
Oh, you gotta send me some of those, man.
I will.
That is
So the
hilarious.
best part of this is Ross, and for those of you guys, I'm gonna laugh throughout this whole interview because it's been such pleasure and memory of working together. Is that when you shoot for a brand like Coca-Cola, you really do bring that energy of bring happiness to everyone. Our campaign was called Open Happiness. We created, and it was all about what you felt like the first time you got to taste Coca-Cola. That was the thematic approach, and then people don't realize you have to hold the Coca-Cola in a certain way. There are rules. You had to hold it right below the logo, no thumb underneath the bottle. Because you know how you hold a bottle of Coca-Cola? Normally people hold a drink like this so they can support it. But no, that's not the rule. You got to hold it this way. And your hands look ginormous. We're like, you're covering the logo the entire time. We're like,
Oh my God.
and you got to tell people, this is your first photo shoot, right? This was your very first job.
It was my very first job ever, and that's so funny because I've been to like castings but I was like never a model, so I think that's why like when I was at this casting, I was like, I'm not gonna get this job. I kind of just want to hang out and like because it was a really cool casting. But yeah, no, I remember when we were shooting, like it was all about like spreading out your fingers, and I to this day I like if I'm drinking a bottle of something, I always like. Like I'm not even kidding. Some people will say that just for like an interview, but yeah, I genuinely like hold a bottle a certain way still to this day.
Well, how did you even hear about the casting? First of all, did you have an agent at the time already?
Did I even? I remember having like a kind of like a modeling agent, but I think this was just like an open
An open call.
I think
We literally did Craigslist, Facebook, and we did the whole blanket of LA. I think you came from like LA casting. I remember that you didn't have an agent, and we had to get hold of you and figure out if you're even going to show up. This is the thing, right? When people don't have agents, we don't know they're actually going to show up or not. We don't know they show up that day, like to hang out, and they're like, dude, I don't want to do this, you know?
Yeah. That's so funny.
It was, I mean, you're laughing now because I laugh because that was so crazy. And I don't know, you knew at that time was that 1 week after I shot you, then we shot your friend Noah.
Yeah.
You know, and
I just saw
Noah's last name again?
Centineo.
Mega star right now, right? He's just blowing up. And during that entire week, 2 weeks of shooting Coca-Cola, we end up casting all these amazing potential actors who become mega stars, including yourself. And little did we know that the process of casting was so unconditional, untraditional to what the industry was doing. And we were doing something that actually found stars without knowing. I mean, it was an incredible, magical time.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It was like in an age before Instagram because I remember I got an Instagram after that. Like, and even that when I got it, my friend was like, "Oh, it's just like this new app. You can edit photos." I was like, "I don't get it," but God, that's so weird. That it was after like the mass social media age. And you guys really, oh my God, yeah. You gotta stop with these photos, man. You gotta send them.
I love them because you know, one of the things that we talked about offline is I really wanted you to be here because you are that international Asian representation that you broke so many boundaries just being on Riverdale and then having this mega stardom in 13 Reasons Why. And before you on screen, when we think about Asian guys, I think it was Glee. You know, they cast him even though name. Yeah. And it was Glee, but it was typical it was very typical Asian caricature, right? Yeah. And every time you cast an Asian girl, she dates a black guy. And Hollywood, Grey's Anatomy, they all do the same formula and ER, and it was just really stereotype. It is what
Yeah.
I guess the Western culture felt like if you're going to cast an Asian guy or an Asian girl, these are what they're going to be. And when I saw you, I didn't see Riverdale, I'll admit that because it's not my demographic, but 13 Reasons Why I was absolutely a crazy fan of. And when I saw you on that show, I couldn't be more proud of the industry, and the showrunner understood that, okay, you know what? We can have an Asian guy play a character normally went to a quarterback, dude that is like Tom Brady like character. How many times you go to casting breakdown? We need an all-American dude to play Jock. How did this casting came about, and what was the process for you to get that role?
Wow, that was so long ago, but it's weird to think about. But yeah, I mean, Brian Yorkie, he's a showrunner, and he comes from writing theater. He's a playwright, and he's actually, and he's a white guy, but he's actually been in support of like having Asian leads in non-stereotypical ways in his plays for like decades. Like it's something that he's always, so like being able to talk to him about it and him being on the same page was amazing. But yeah, I mean, originally the role wasn't written Asian. It was just Zach, and in the book it didn't specify what race he was. But yeah, I mean, I just auditioned, and I was up against a few couple people, and when I got it, I was just like, I mean, like Riverdale, I think was the first one that I played like or actually Casey Undercover with Zendaya. That was like the first role that I got that was like a jock-ish role. He wasn't a jock, but he was jock-ish. But yeah, I mean, the conversations came up, and my big thing is like, I'm very proud of being part Asian, of being Malaysian and Chinese on my Asian half, and I love to represent that in ways. But at the end of the day, I'm American. Like, I was raised American, and this is the culture that I associate with the best. Like, I wouldn't go to China and try to pass myself off as like a Chinese actor and like try to like be in their Chinese culture, like, because that's just not who I am. But yeah, to represent like the Asian American side, the Brian Yorkie and all the people I've worked with, they made I made it very clear what I want to do, and they've been on board. So yeah, it's been a crazy like 6-7 years where it's flipped from me only auditioning for these stereotype roles to now it's like colorblind casting, and we still got some steps to go, but it's been a massive change in the past 5-6 years.
But it's interesting, your character on the show also did not focus on your race. What I love about that show is that it's so diverse, but it wasn't focused on this character being black, or this person being Asian, this person being Hispanic, and therefore they react a certain way. In fact, every character reacted the way they are because that's who they are, whether you want to say that's Western culture, American, but it has its own definition based on their own storyline, rather than I'm this way because I'm an Asian person, and that was very refreshing to see. And also, I think by episode 6, it sounds weird to say, but we've forgotten that you're Asian. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's like the only reference made to my race in it was when my mom in the show calls me Zach Shangyong Dempsey. And that's the only time there's like any reference to Asian
She was
culture.
very stereotyped, though.
Yeah. I mean,
she was everybody's mom in China. I'm sorry.
Yeah. But she wasn't like Asian stereotype. Like of course, there is a stereotype that Asian moms are tiger moms, but she was also just a strict mom. But then she wasn't teaching me to be like an academic. She was just like, no, focus on sports, do this and that. And so she was just a strict, very proactive mom.
Was she like your mom?
No, in real life, kind of, yeah. I mean, in real life, the actress that played my mom is nothing like my mom, but the character she played was like my mom. Yeah.
Well, I think
for
you, a 6'3" man, in real life or in acting, you need somebody who's a tiger mom to get you in control.
God, I gave my mom so much hell when I was younger. Like she had such a hard time wrangling me in.
But what is it like, you think, and now that you have, I say that you've broken the stereotype. I remember when you got casted, there was so much article around you all over the world. In Asia, I actually heard it from the Singapore news, because I worked so much in Asia. I went back to Asia to do television shows, hosting cooking shows there, and also I do Asia's Next Top Model there as a judge and host. So I actually didn't know that you got this role it wasn't until I was in Asia working, and then there's a huge news like, oh my God, Western culture breaking boundary, hiring, casting an Asian person. Now, you're not the first Asian that's on TV, however, right?
No.
There's Lost. We have so many. Most of them
Yeah,
are
there's
doctor
Lost,
shows.
Grey's Anatomy. Yeah, yeah. No, I
Most
mean
of them
there's
are doctor shows because it seems like that's where they belong.
yeah.
But I think that we are getting closer and closer in this industry, feel responsible, I think, to make sure that we are including. And inclusion is so important to me. I wanted you here because next week I'm actually focusing on the entire week talking to Asian models that who is represented by an agency called Nomad, and Coca-Cola, who is a white model, opened this agency to bring Asian models into the Western culture, which is fascinating to me that it took a white woman to open the door for Asian people, where Asian population is actually combined is more than Western population, right? So we're gonna have those conversations, and we're gonna learn a little bit about these models, how they work through the bureaucracies and the stereotype, and how themselves have their own journey, how they break the barriers. But for you, do you now go into audition still thinking, well, I'm Asian American or American Asian, and I may not get this role because of this?
Yeah, I will say it's not as much in my mind. For now, it's not. If it's right for the character, now I'm thinking of like quotas. So like,
Mm,
if they have an Asian lead and I'm auditioning for the lead, I'm like a real question that I have with the producers and directors is like, is this something realistic that you're for a story for you to have two Asian leads? It's like, of course, I would love that. And of course, I want representation, but we have to ask ourselves what is realistic, like, because we can't swing too far in the opposite direction, because before we were massively underrepresented, we now shouldn't aim to create an unbalanced ratio in the fact of like having an all Asian cast for an American story. You know what I mean?
but it has to be appropriate. What you're saying, that it has to fit the part and appropriate.
It has to fit the part. It has to be appropriate, and of course, there can be two Asian leads. For example, Crazy Rich Asians, that makes perfect sense. Perfect sense that it's an Asian-led cast, and it's amazing that that was a thing. But if you have like an American high school story and you have like everybody's Asian,
But wait
I'm
a
like,
minute, if you live in Diamond Bar, California, that would be realistically true.
and I was gonna say, it happens, it absolutely happens, or like Westchester, and down like I get it. But then that is an American story, but is like, but what story are you trying to tell? You know what I mean?
Absolutely right. For TV show like Fresh Off the Boat, it would not make sense that everybody's white, right?
Yeah.
Fresh Off the Boat make any sense. But Constance to be from Taiwan,
Yeah.
and she has to represent Taiwanese community and the culture from Taiwan. It doesn't make sense that she's black playing that character. So
Exactly. And I think that like if we're trying to fight for Asian stories to be portrayed, like, we've had the whitewashing issue, and if we really want Asian people to play Asian characters, we have to respect the reverse as well. Like, they're casting like Hercules now, and somebody tweeted like Ross should be Hercules. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Like, I'm
why
flattered.
not? I think they just want to see you shirt off. Like, they just want to see you with your shirt off.
We'll get back to that. I got to get back in shape after this quarantine situation, but it just doesn't make sense. Like, he's a Greek god, and I mean, and sure, he's a god, so I guess it's like you could race bend a little bit, but or if you were to do a story about like the Romans, like of course it just wouldn't make sense for like the emperor of the Romans to be
But
Asian.
Wouldn't it be awesome that it does make sense at some point? Wouldn't it be awesome that it doesn't matter? Because I get it in acted. For me, for example, I completely understand what you're saying. I can tell you, as an Asian photographer growing up in America, and I'm Asian American, I came here when I was like 12. So I grew up in Midwest, Indiana, and then moved to California. But for me, I still today ask the question, am I going to get this job? Would it help me being Asian getting this job? Or would I not get this job because I'm Asian? And there's so many layers to those questions, right? Am I going to get the job because I'm gay or I'm not? Am I going to get this job? And the last question I ask myself, am I going to get the job because I'm talented? I'm good at what I'm doing? Because those are the insecurity that we're bred into our Asian culture. I grew up in a very competitive culture, right? You got to be academic. You got to be first in your class. You got to do this. Or if you're not first, you're not good enough, right? And then when you come to this country, I don't know how it is for your family. My mom, my dad always says, don't ever forget your skin color. Doesn't matter what color you bleach your hair, doesn't matter what clothes you wear, you always have brown eyes and yellow skin. Not so much true these days. We can change that too. But the point is, the point of it is that they were a constant reminder that I had to remember I'm Asian. And whether or not because we live in Indiana where racism, where we used to still have KKK parades on weekends, that we have no choice but remember who we are, because if we don't, then we're in danger, you know? And to have the blessing my family move us to California, where it's a much more integrated society here, that's when I actually became even more aware that I'm Asian, because there are pockets of communities that are Asian. Indiana, there was none. We're the only Asian people in our town. And okay, and then I'm like, oh, you mean I can go down to Monterey Park and be Taiwanese for a day and eat Taiwanese food, and I can go to Chinatown and be from China and eat Shanghai food? And you know what I mean? There's as much as we can join together, where there's pockets of areas allowed us to be reminded of who we are, and then be able to step aside from it and go, okay, I'm still in America, and I still have to learn how to speak English, because back then it wasn't so good. But as we evolved, I wanted to be an actor when I was young. I wanted to be on television when I was young. I was at Disney. I auditioned for Disney. I worked for Disney.
Really?
Disney. Oh my God, I was a Disney kid. I wanted to be on Mickey Mouse Club so bad.
That's so funny.
But let me tell you the funny story, Ross, is that when I first started, I would go to Central Casting, and I would go to those auditions. And Central Casting, for you guys who don't know, is pretty much, back then it was you call in. There's no internet. You call in, and they'll have a recording looking for a 6'3" tall, dark hair, blue, brown eyes, Asian-esque guys, and show up at this time. And people who are in that category will show up. I show up for everything. It could be like, we're looking for a white girl, skateboard. I showed up. And because I did not have a understanding why I was being categorized. And because of that, I started getting castings. I started getting parts. Now, I didn't continue to pursue that career for many different reasons. Insecurity, my accent, insecurity, my height, insecurity of my looks. And again, I didn't see a lot of Asian people on television at that time. Honestly, like at Disney, guess what character I'm going to play? Aladdin, you know?
I can see it. I see it.
Hey, these days I can play Mulan too, okay?
You can go either way. It's 2020.
Back then, no, but now we're progressive now. We can do more. But that's what I mean by, like, it's such a weird dynamic that continue to happen in our industry that we are constantly have to find a way to adjust, you know? And at what point, what's the balance, right? What is the actual true balance for at least for our industry, in our entertainment industry? What is a true balance for you?
The true balance, I think, because I'm also moving into the production side of things and looking at the industry about like the sellability of something, the balance is finding like representation where it fits or where you can start to push the boundary. You know what I mean? It's like if you have a sci-fi movie that's like set in the future, right, where it's just like you don't need to focus on race. Like race is something that's been mixed. You can push that boundary.
Whoopi Goldberg, and then you have where the races are a lot more integrated. Or if you have mixed race people, or it's like if you have a race of people going to Mars, like or Earth people going to Mars, you can cast those roles as any race. It's like we don't know because we haven't been there yet. Whereas if you're looking to the past, like I said, with like you have Romans or ancient China, you should be a little bit more. You're a realist. You're a realist.
I'm a realist, but where and just finding where to push the boundaries realistically. So like for all these high school jock rules, I was like, why aren't there what is there stopping culture, not only culturally but just in general, from there being an Asian jock? There isn't.
Education. It's like okay, listen. Only Asian jock everybody seems to know is Michael Chen, who played tennis. Okay, I get it. Wait, there's Yao Ming, who played basketball, you guys.
Exactly.
Yao Ming. But it's so little representation in that way. And also, it's not just what's on screen. For me, I'm a proponent in having Asian people on my crew. I want an Asian makeup artist at times. I want an Asian crew. Because I do think that in our industry, I don't know if you feel that but Asian people compete against themselves first, then they
Oh yeah.
start competing against everybody else, right? It's like you have two battles to fight, not just one.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because yeah, there's a lot of infighting in our community. Just and I think that is because of just culturally, like China, Japan, Korea, like there Taiwan, like there's so much infighting where it gets in the way sometimes. But yeah, the Asian community has in the last few years, as far as I've seen, has started to come together a lot and started to push in. Um, because I think within our community there also is two battles that we're fighting as a whole. Like we're battling for
Well,
Asians to play Asian roles and then Asians to play non-Asian roles.
but you also mentioned is very poignant what you said. If the lead is already Asian, how many other role would be collectively in that film? And I wonder if that works the same for African Americans. Oh, Isaac Alba is already playing this
Yeah.
role. It's another black person is going to ask the question, can I be in this movie? Because Isaac Alba is already there. I don't know the answer to that. When I get to talk to Isaac Alba, I'll ask him. But interesting enough that especially during this pandemic, I became very sensitive and very aware of these issues, right? Because the diseases came from, the virus came from China, and during the first 6 weeks of this pandemic, I felt those negativity. I felt the word racism all over again, right? And that has to do with our lack of education from television and lack of understanding what this whole pandemic is about. But we are marginalized now, and now when I work with publications in Asia, and they're so sensitive now about celebration being Asian, and that pendulum starting to swing, right? It's starting to swing the other way again, and I hope to be able to help this to support them in any way I can possibly can, because I do think that pendulum needs to swing really far, at least once, to find the equilibrium back. And we haven't swung that far for the Asian community, I feel.
As far as celebrating being Asian,
And
or
at
like,
least in the Western culture, with a Western understanding, right? And I'll give you a funny story about when Crazy Rich Asian came out, and before it was filming, I was asked actually to be part of that production, and I was in the middle of another show, and they talked about the character that's going to be a photographer on the show, and I was like, I'm not. That's a stereotype. You're going to have me play a photographer. That's what I do for a living. Of course, I regret it. I didn't do the job. Dumb. But I was too busy. It was conflict of scheduling. It wasn't because I didn't want to. Yeah, because next one I would definitely do whatever the schedule is. I'll show up. But then my white friends called me and DM me, goes, I didn't realize Asian people are so funny. And I was like, did you just really say that? Because my response to him, he's a friend, so I can say this. I was like, I didn't realize white people were so dumb. Like, to him, I was not saying white people are dumb, guys. Just don't get me for saying that. It was a direct, immediate reflection, because I didn't know how to take it. It's a really good friend of mine. I go, does he realize how racially wrong that conversation was?
yeah, it's an interesting thing because the stereotype is that we all look alike, right? But I mean, as you can clearly,
I wish I looked like you. So yes, we look alike. Great.
Yeah, you say you and I both look alike, but we're the rare occasion. But the thing is that I mean, a lot of people can't tell the difference between Chinese, Japanese, Korean visually, like we can, because we notice. But it's also the flip side of that is that a lot of people can't tell German from Austrian from Dutch from.
But that's interesting you say that. Do people come up to you and say, "Are you Chinese? Are you Filipino? Are you Thai?" Do people still ask you that?
Yeah, a lot of people still. Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting, and that's fine. Like, I honestly don't have a problem with someone asking me like, "What is my heritage?" Because I am mixed, and it's like I'm weird to look at. But like, the flip is that it's just because our culture has been so stereotyped that we've all been lumped in one country of origin, right? Like, oh, the Chinese, and then that's what's kind of led to this about people like associating coronavirus with all Asian people, and I haven't talked about it too much on social media for one particular case, is because if you're not educated enough to know the difference between there's first of all different Asian races, but also Asian American, like Chinese American versus Chinese, and if you're blaming Chinese Americans for a a Chinese virus, then
There's no reason to even talk to them.
yeah, I mean, you're not going to get it anyway.
Yeah.
So it's so that's where I'm at. It's just like, I think young people understand the difference, whereas like the people that don't understand the difference are people that aren't going to get it. So I'm focusing on the positive and
You're
trying
choosing your
to,
battle. You're choosing your battle
I'm choosing
clearly.
the battle, and like I'm just trying to continue to represent us Asian Americans in the best way that I can, and show that we value our heritage and we're proud of our heritage, but that isn't what we grew up in. That's not our culture. So, but yeah, I mean, it's I think we are breaking down, and people are definitely starting to know the difference between Korean and Chinese and Japanese, because these cultures are starting to be represented on Netflix a lot more. Like there's tons of Korean movies on Netflix now.
The best. I mean, Korean movie winning Oscars. That was such a pivotal history. But I do feel like in Hollywood, for example, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, the consensus that there wasn't enough Black people represented, and there's not enough Black people on stage, and then all of a sudden we get all the Black people are winning all the awards, and then we go, there's not enough Asian people represented, then a bunch of Asian people, and that equilibrium is really hard to find. And I'm glad it's swinging the other way. I'm glad I'm seeing all the different races, the people that it's being represented. I know that sometimes it plays for my benefit. I will admit that, because 4 years ago, when the Hollywood was getting so much trouble that it's so whitewashed, I got a job to do the red carpet at the Oscars. And I guarantee you, if there wasn't that pendulum swinging that way, nobody would have called me. I knew I got that job because of my skin color. I knew I got that job because they couldn't tell which Asian I was. Because the biggest argument in my life is people go, you're not Chinese, you don't look Chinese. When I'm in Thailand, they'll say, oh, you look like you're Malaysian. When I'm in Malaysia, no, you look like you're from Taiwan. When I'm in Taiwan, there's no way you're Taiwanese. You must be mixed. No, you have a white in you. My whole life. Because I don't have I never fall into the stereotypical look, and I don't whatever that look that people say Asian's supposed to look like, right? Nor do I have the personality either, so. Of the stereotype.
Yeah, I mean, all these, what you're saying about the pendulum swinging, it's like, it's these trends, and it comes in waves, and there's eras where it's just like different focus on different races, and every single time that happens, we chip away a little bit at this stereotype. So, yeah, I mean, the only thing is like,
it's not a pendulum.
Consistency.
It's like a wrecking ball. It's not even a pendulum. It's like a wrecking ball. It needs to freaking break some walls and break some boundaries. And you're doing that, being you, and that's what's really fascinating to me, and that's why I'm so proud of you, is that you are not actively trying to break boundaries. You're just doing what you love, and through that, the walls are breaking, and I want you to know that. I want you to know. You're not. Listen, I don't open the magazine and use like champion for Asian people, but your action, what you're doing, the roles that you're getting, and the way you portray your characters, speak loudly. You're doing that, and I think that says greatly about who you are as a person and the characters you play. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it's I used to be a lot more vocal about it, and I've kind of changed my strategy less from this wrecking ball and more to like just a strongly flowing river. It's constant pressure. We're constantly constantly being in the eye and constantly working on projects. That's what's going to tell the story. I've switched from a show rather than tell strategy of like just taking on roles that can show what I'm trying to say better than I can say it. Because, the fans will read it, and again, just kind of like the distinction between Chinese and Chinese American, the fans that know my story, and those are the people that go out of their way to read like an interview I do about this particular subject. But for the people that aren't that don't know who I am, that don't know my name, and just watch the projects, that's what's going to change their mind. Not an article about like an interview that I do specifically on it, but about watching a story being told about a high school jock that has to deal with cultural expectations versus what he wants. So yeah, I mean, it's finding the balance in that too, because I don't want to seem like I'm like.
Oh, you're not complicit. I know what you mean. Your silence is not your complacency, and I think that's really important. And I think that's why I wanted you to be on the show to talk to you about this, because people do often think that being silent is complicity. Actually, your action speaks louder than words most of the time.
Exactly.
And one of the most important things I know about you, that you're in a position now choosing roles that you want and choosing roles that you take, and that is speaking loudly. And that's what I mean by being in the position where you are now. You're in a producing role that you're crafting, you're working on new shows, and I know because of this journey, you're gonna have more sensitivity of the next journey, whether or not it's in a crew or is it behind the camera, in front of the camera. I think it goes wider and broader than just what you see in front of the camera, right? There are so many talented people in this industry. Now, I would never hire a makeup or hairstylist just because they're Asian. I hire them because they're incredibly talented and they happen to be Asian. Now, two next to each other, I hope I can be colorblind and pick whoever is appropriate for that job. And I think that's important. But I'm a proponent of celebrating shooting with an Asian crew if I'm working on an Asian magazine. Because I get very confused when I look at, let's say, Japanese Vogue, for example. It's run by a French woman. It's like, and there's never Asian people on the cover. But it's like, why don't you not call it Japanese Vogue? Because I don't get it. And I'm from fashion industry. I get it, but I don't. I think it's perpetuation of self-hate sometimes with these publications. And then there are publications like Harper's Bazaar Singapore, I work with a lot, and Vogue Thailand, who make sure that they're shooting local talent. They're celebrating local people. Yes, everybody wants Jennifer Aniston on their cover because it sells the magazine. But you have to take the time and effort to celebrate your own kind, right?
Yeah. Just like you said, there's the days where you can go Diamond Bar or whatever, and you can celebrate.
That's where my mom lives, by the way, guys. That's where my mom lives. That's why I said Diamond Bar. Yeah, I go to Diamond Bar and play mahjong all the time.
Oh my God.
I'm very Asian in that way.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's important to know your heritage, and your heritage is interesting. It's like, again, like I told you, I was learning Chinese. I've started learning Japanese now, even though like I'm not like. I don't have a ton of Japanese in my blood, but it's a reminder of kind of like the generation before you, what they had to deal with, especially for me, like, growing up, not seeing any Asian actors in TV and movie. It's just a reminder of, and it's to inspire yourself that like, yeah, you're changing this now for the next generation. And that's all we can really do, is all we can really hope for if you're ambitious, is to leave the world a little bit different than how you came into it and set it up for the next people, and make the next Asian American generation feel less lonely or make them feel more included.
And you but I'm sure you've been told this, that, in different generations, for my generation, I'm older than you. Guys, I am older with him, even though I look younger, right? But
we're looking about mid-20s both.
So back then, when I turned on the television, I didn't see anybody that I can relate to or understand that there's possibilities, right? And what you're doing now is letting people know there's lots of there's possibilities. And those yeses are, yes, you can play a superhero. I mean, you play a superhero in tights, even, So yes, you can play a superhero in tights, being Asian American and whatnot.
You can just be in the entertainment industry. That's the biggest thing, that it's to affect more the parents of the next generation. Just saying that the entertainment industry is lucrative and you can make a career out of it, and you can also be happy doing it. Like, that's the biggest thing, is that Asian parents push their kids into jobs that they're not necessarily happy in. If you want to be a doctor and that's your passion, go for it. But if you're more of a creative, or not to say that doctors aren't creative, I think doctors are super creative, but if you want to be in more of the creative arts, let's just say, that is a path that you can be very financially secure and you can be happy and
it's cultural, right? Thousands and thousands of years that sons are supposed to help take over the family, and even though we don't all do that anymore because everybody are very self-sustaining, but culturally it is about that, being the male figure in the family, and you're going to earn the living and so you can support your family, and they all mean very well. I have to say that the truth is that the Asian culture might be so much pressure. I get it now. I didn't get it when I was younger. I was like, that's forcing me to do this shit, like literally stop, and when I wanted to be an artist when I was young, my parents are like, well, you want to be poor for the rest of your life? This is not poor enough. You don't see how much we struggle now. You're going to be even poor. And it wasn't until, it was funny enough, because I graduated in pre-med. I finished my biology, zoology degree. So I have my lots of science degrees. And then
Yeah.
and I got accepted to Art Center in Pasadena. And my family did not understand at first until they saw an article in a Taiwan newspaper of the women designer who designed it, Ford Taurus, #1 selling car in Ford history. And it says,
Wow.
designed by a Taiwanese designer.
Mm.
All of a sudden, you should go to Art Center. You need to go. And I'm like,
And that's what they need. They just need somebody that's like prominent, because again, it's a lot of it is about face. It's about like the prestige of it. Like if you can get your name in the paper for designing something, like that's what Asian parents love, is like, oh yeah, like
but
the
don't
prestige.
you feel like, maybe, I don't know, you feel this, but being a mixed race growing up, I'm sure there was a lot of teasing, there's bullying, people don't know who you're from, they question you. I don't know how that was like for you. But for me in middle America, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it was constantly, everybody's like, Daniel-san, because the movie was out and there was an Asian person, his name was out, therefore. And I get in fights every single day, just because there was so much uneducated people. You know,
Yeah.
and kids are just mean to begin with. And through that time, you start building self-doubt and self-hate of who you are, right? And when somebody, there's so many different types of bullying, but when you start bullying people because of race and their look, they can't change that. What it does to you inside, it's completely different than just bullying you because you're a nerd, or bullying you because you're not a jock, or bullying you because
it's bullying on something that you have no control over, your genetics.
Zero control over, right? And that I had to go through, right? I had to go, at some point, this is who I am, and then I had to believe that this is okay to be on television. No, there's a place for me in an entertainment industry. 10 years ago, do I think I would be here? No, I thought I would just always be behind the camera because I gave up, right? I gave up. Like, this is where I belong. I'm an Asian dude. I'm not going to get any parts in the movie. I'm never going to be able to go on Broadway. I'm never going to get on Dancing with the Star because I was, forget it. That's it. I'm going to stay behind the camera. But crazy enough, how time has evolved and the pendulum has swung, that I to be in front of the camera. And all those things happen because, not because all of a sudden I look different, but definitely has to do with the fact that all of a sudden, because my career in photography solidified itself, build the confidence to know, okay, I can swing the camera the other way. I can be that pendulum and start swinging the other way and break some boundaries, break some walls. And I have to thank Tyra Banks for that, because she put the first Taiwanese on CW. And CW made a big deal of it, and I didn't even realize it's a big deal, right? Because again, I became colorblind after a while. Then I realized, oh my gosh, I have a responsibility. Right, like you said, you begin to have to go.
It's a responsibility. And it's not something that you don't have to feel obligated to be like an activist or anything. But I think if you are an ambitious person, if you're someone who grew up experiencing something that made you feel less of a human, you naturally want to not, for the next generation, not to feel that.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
So it's just about like how you're raised. And I think being Asian American and growing up in America versus growing up in Asia and then coming to America, that is a big difference in, I think, your goal setting as far as like what you want to do in this industry. Where it's just like, if you come from Asia and you were raised there, it's like, oh, I can always go back and I can be with the people that look like me, and I can be with, and I have that I was raised with. But if you're grown here, and where I grew up was a little bit more diverse than Indiana, but still, we were still dealing with stereotypes. It's
if you also younger, so you came into the country. You came over when diversity is already permeated in television. But interesting you said that about going back home to find a place that where you feel accepted, and this happened for me, and I left. And can I tell you, it's the biggest blessing that happened. I would not have a TV show that I've been working on so passionately about, going back to Taiwan where I was born, and travel and cook and feed and cook for the people who were cooking for others. And that's what the show about. It's called Street to Kitchen Asia. That happened for that reason. So those moments keep me reminded that every single time these crazy pivotal moments, critical moment that happens in a negative way, it seems like, even through this pandemic, it makes me realize something brighter comes from it, or something I'm going to learn from it. I wouldn't do this talk, right? I wouldn't do this talk without being in this pandemic we're in, and people would not have the time or be as vulnerable and share these stories with me if it wasn't during this time, you know?
Honestly, yeah, yeah. I just had a talk about this yesterday on IG Live about mental health and
And
everything.
I watched.
Oh, did you? Oh, yeah, I was. Yeah, and it was cool because it's like, yeah, you know, and I think we greatly misunderstand the effect of negative events that happen in your life, because what those serve to do, that if you look at them crazy, is it sets you back down to zero mentally. It's like a reset and makes you reanalyze like where you are, and puts things in perspective, because sometimes when you're super successful and you're building, you lose sight, and because like, you know, you're going you lose sight of where you used to be. And then if something like tragic happens, or something that's really sad, or you have to
Something you
learn
have no
something new,
control over. Zero
something you have no
control.
control over, or something that you have to adapt,
Yes.
that's when it resets you, you know? So I think like during this pandemic, and I've had this conversation with some of my friends, is um, a lot of us that are social beings, that are out a lot, and we have a lot of social obligations, and we this time, I'm hearing a lot of my friends that they're getting anxious. It's because they're not used to being alone. They're not used to like being alone with their thoughts and having to analyze themselves and
It's
reflect on
scary.
themselves. It's scary, but you know, it's necessary though. And you know, I went through this phase because when I moved to LA, I didn't have any friends. I didn't know anybody. I spent a lot of time alone, and it's a lot of time like self-reflection is going to set you in a better direction after this COVID situation. Like, if you can understand why you're feeling anxious, or why you feel like you need external stimuli to be happy or to be entertained, then it's like, maybe figure that out. Maybe figure out why you're being anxious, or, but yeah, and I think that can lead to good things, just like you said. Like, maybe this COVID situation made you more interested in knowing more about your friends or the people that you've worked with, and you've just really been having the time to think about it. And then now you're like, you know what? Why don't I just talk to them? And then from that, it's like you learn. So yeah, it's like I see always tragedy it levels the playing field, like with you and your surroundings. It
I
brings you
feel
back
it's
down to
funny you
zero.
said that, because I had the similar conversation with a friend of mine, and I made this analogy to him. I said, I feel like we're all now not running we're running a marathon, but we're on a starting block to run that marathon. We're all on the
Yep.
same starting block now. It's an even playing field. How you want to start your race, it's on you. How you want to pace yourself for the next chapter of all lives, it's on you, because there's never going to be anything like it, what COVID is doing to all of us
Yep.
worldly.
Once in a
We
lifetime.
see people collectively get bond together. People collectively begin to evaluate what matters to them, have conversation that matters to them, like the one we're having today. We would not have this conversation today if it wasn't for the fact that this is happening in the Asian community, or this is happening worldly, right? And
Hmm.
I think it's super valuable lesson. And for me, I know that these pivotal critical points that happens in my life, they're absolutely about reevaluating who I am. And when I begin to try to evaluate who I am, I will always go back to, okay, I'm not that Asian guy who look in the mirror and not love myself anymore. I'm over that. Now what's next? What are you going to do now to make this moment valuable to you when you look back at it? You know, and that.
Yeah. And I think the answer is doing exactly what you're doing now. You're hosting this thing, hopefully for other people to see, to help them feel more secure in who they are. And that's like the lesson. And before you can help everybody else, you have to help yourself. And
Absolutely.
you've gotten to the point of self-acceptance, and now you can help other people with their self-acceptance. You know?
And it's moment in time that you don't realize when you do things like this, it makes other people happy. I have so many of these. I'm gonna blast them on the internet. I
Oh
love
my God.
they're amazing.
You gotta send me these, man. And if
Yeah.
like the
Oh
stats
my
of
god.
the
That's my Letterman jacket you're wearing, by the way.
oh
Finally, a
my
joke is
God.
wearing my Letterman jacket in high school. That was
Oh
dream come
my
true. Guys, everyone,
God.
Ross Butler is wearing my Letterman jacket in swim school.
That's so funny, man. Dude, like Are we allowed to post these, or is
Yes,
Coca-Cola still owned?
you're allowed to post them.
I'm gonna throwback Thursday. That's so hard. Oh my god.
No, but thank you so much for sharing these thoughts with me because I know
Of
that
course,
this is not
man.
something that is always on the surface, but it's embedded in you. And this conversation could go on forever, but I'm going to cut it off soon. Thank you for being inspiration without actively trying because that's what's most beautiful. No, that's what's most beautiful for me. And thank you for responding to me after 10 years. It's way too long and that we need to stay connected. And
Sure,
there
man.
and the fact that we haven't done a photo shoot since, and you didn't even reach out to me. You've been like, hey, shoot me. You never did. After that, you know what, Russ? You made
Well,
the
it's
money and
because
you ran. You took the cash and you left.
I wanted to get to the point where I could ask you to shoot, and
I
because you were a big shot, and I was just like, I gotta get to his level first, where where we could actually shoot on the same playing
listen.
field.
I'm the same
So
person
yes, we'll,
on
we'll
that
shoot soon.
field when it was raining and still dancing. And there's shots of you with my little baby French bulldog. I mean, we have those
Oh, that's so.
campaigns. The soy was on set. So, that guys, I think it's so important for you guys to know this is that from a casting that took 4,000 people to narrow down to this wonderful man in front of me and can end up being this mega star, everything is possible. So next time
Yeah,
you're waiting in line for something, just to know it's worth the wait sometimes, you
yeah,
know?
and
And
just enjoy
sometimes,
it.
I hate to
Enjoy
say
it.
this, when you don't give a shit, things happen. Because it happened for you.
Yeah, you don't need it. All you need is yourself, right? And so don't. Yeah, yeah. That's the one thing I would is have fun. That's it. Just have
I,
fun.
and
Enjoy
and
it.
I'll end with this. Can I tell you guys? Those shoes, it may look beautiful and glorious, and the light was all beautiful. It was raining. It was cold. Everybody was getting sick. It was one of the hardest photo shoot because with all that stuff was happening, I'm like, smile, everybody, look Asian.
Now, I remember because we were shooting on Venice Beach, but it was winter, but we had to shoot for summer, and it was the coldest shit I had
This,
ever felt in my life.
yes, this is Venice. See the people in the
Oh,
background rollerblading, and so it was freezing. But you know what?
so cold.
It was all worth it. It was
Yeah.
all worth it. Look at that
Hey,
billboard.
taste the feeling, guys. Taste the feeling.
Little did you know that one single bottle of Coca-Cola, learning how to hold it, spreading your hand, and I never let the fluid touch your lips yet when I shoot it.
Yeah.
It's barely touching the.
You gotta hold it. You gotta hold it like this. You gotta
That's
hold
right.
it like
To
that.
Coca-Cola. To our,
To
to
Coca-Cola.
our beginning. They should sponsor this talk.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Wow. I'm even wearing the colors here. It's
Well, thank you
anyway.
so much for your time, and
Of course.
I will make sure we stay in touch. And please reach out. I would love to photograph you. I'd love to get us on a date that's not freezing. we do.
Yeah.
You got a lot of stuff going on, and we'll share our journey together more offline and online because I really
Yeah.
appreciate the time with you.
I would love to, man. It's good talking to you. Bye,
Take care.
everybody.
Thank you,
Hope you had
everyone.
fun.
Hello guys, so that was Ross Butler. How exciting was to have him here. My Asian brother, I know from 10 years ago, cast him in a Coca-Cola campaign and end up creating this beautiful, amazing star. He's just exactly what you think he is. Cool, like a cucumber. Super nice. And I'm so happy that you guys got to experience our talk together. And this is Friday, so try to enjoy your weekend. And I will be back again, and there's a special feature this Sunday. I will be talking to the editor-in-chief of Harper's Bazaar Singapore about inclusion and what's the magazine world like now in the fashion world, as well what has this pandemic done and for the Asian community and how we are champion for positivity within our community. And I'm excited to speak to him as Kenneth Go. He will be with me on Sunday. It's a late hour time because we want to make sure it's daytime in Asia. Until then, I will see you guys next week. I've posted the guest that will be on next week. Next week is super special for me because it's the relationship with Coca-Cola, the agency that she has in bringing Asian models to the Western Hemisphere. So we're gonna have a lot of talk with all the models that comes on. Some of them I worked with before, some of them I haven't. So it'll be nice to reconnect with some of them and listen to their journeys. In the meantime, you guys, everyone, stay safe out there, stay healthy. We'll get through this all together and keep on talking because that does really help. Put a smile on your face, everyone. I'll see you this Sunday.